What's the opposite of spiritual? Well, non-spiritual, but in 1 Corinthians, Paul gives another word, begins with a C.
Carnal.
They're carnal. Okay, so the point is, this pastor said, well, the reason why maybe you're not seeing the gifts is because the people aren't where they should be in their Christian walk. They're not spiritual yet. They're still carnal. Now, that's not an insult. There are some people who are new converts. I mean, if a new convert hasn't figured out their spiritual gift, I mean, you can understand they've only been a Christian for a couple weeks. That's understandable. There are some people who, they're not new converts, but maybe they are a babe in Christ. You know, they should be here, but they're not there yet. They're here. And again, these are not insults. It's just the reality of it. So not everybody is spiritual, but those who are spiritual, presumably they found their spiritual gifts. So the spiritual gifts are for those who are, well, it's for everybody, but you find out your gift and you serve it when you're spiritual. So that's the way one pastor described it, and I just thought, you know what, that makes a lot of sense. Because naturally there are going to be people who they just don't know what their gift is yet. And we want to help them and encourage them and challenge them to find their gift. Again, if you really want to thrive in the Christian life and in the Christian walk, you got to find your gift and then exercise it. So again, that always made a lot of sense to me. Another thing about serving, what does the word ministry mean? Do you know? It means service, right? Ministry is serving. So whose job is the ministry? It's the entire church. So a lot of people, here's another wrong way to think of it. They say, well, ministry is the pastor's job, or it's the deacon's job, or it's the elder's job. No, it's the job of everybody. As we're going to see in Ephesians 4, it's actually the pastor's job or the leadership's job to equip the saints for ministry. So really, ministry is your job. It's all of our job. So we need to ask ourselves, how can we serve one another? Not how can I serve myself, but how can I serve other people? But at the same time, isn't this sort of the condition of man, that we do tend to serve ourselves? You know, taking care of number one, that's just the way people are. But remember what Jesus said. He said, even about himself, he said, the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many. So even Jesus, who is the King of Kings, and if anyone deserves to be served, who is it? Christ. But Christ set the example, and he says, no, I came to serve other people. And he had the 3.5-year ministry, which, what is ministry? It's serving. And Jesus served others. So we should do the same, is the point. Now, as far as the passage goes that we're looking at, Paul is writing, here's the context of the passage, he's writing to the Corinthian church, and he's addressing these topics because he knows that the Corinthians were not a spiritual group. He talks about them in chapter 3, that many of them are carnal. So he's writing, talking about these things because there's a problem. He's trying to fix the problem. So the subject is important for all of us, but especially for the Corinthians. They were being selfish and they were divided. This was a divided church into factions, and people were just not considering other people. If you take notes, you can write this down. There are 3 main chapters here that talk about the spiritual gifts, 12, 13, and 14. So it's a major theme in 1 Corinthians. Spends 3 chapters. You say, well, 13 is the love chapter. That's not about spiritual gifts. No, it's in between 12 and 14 because love should drive your service, right? Love is what the gifts are about, serving others because you love others. So he spends 3 chapters talking about it because it was such an issue in the church. But there's also 3 other chapters that give a list of what the spiritual gifts are. So let's go through what the gifts are. Can we do that? Write this down. Romans 12, there are 3 main passages in the Bible that list the spiritual gifts. We're in 1 Corinthians 12, right? Another one is Romans 12. and then the other one is Ephesians 4. This is how I remember it. 3 times 4 equals 12. 3 passages, 1 Corinthians 12, Romans 12, and Ephesians 4. I know that probably doesn't make sense to you, but in my mind, this helps me to remember. And then you can throw in 1 Peter 4, which also brings up the subject. So three main passages, and they list individually what the gifts are. And when you put it together, all 3 passages, you get a list of the spiritual gifts. So let me go through the list, all right? And remember, if you know Christ, you have at least one of these gifts. So here they are. Hopefully I won't forget any. Teaching, excuse me, the gift of teaching. There is the gift of exhortation or encouragement. There's the gift of giving, the gift of faith, the gift of mercy, leadership or administration, the gift of serving or helps. There's the gift of discernment or discerning of spirits. We talked about this in our series from Jude. So that's the gift of discernment. There's the gift of prophecy. There's the gift that's called the word of wisdom. Then there's the gift of the word of knowledge. And then healing, tongues, and interpretation of tongues. So hopefully I didn't leave any out. I don't think I did. But now let's go to Ephesians chapter 4, because sometimes 5 other gifts are added to that list. So teaching, exhortation, giving, faith, mercy, administration, helps, discernment, prophecy, word of wisdom, word of knowledge, healing, tongues, interpretation of tongues. And then maybe you can add 5 more that we see here in Ephesians 4, 11 and 12.